No, I tell you, no. I won't have you bringing strange young girls in for supper. By candlelight, I suppose, in the cheap erotic fashion of young men with cheap erotic minds.
Mother, please.
And then what? After supper, music, whispers?
Mother, she's just a stranger. She's hungry and it's raining out.
Mother, she's just a stranger. As if men don't desire strangers. As if... Oh, I refuse to speak of disgusting things because they disgust me. You understand, boy? Go on, go tell her she'll not be appeasing her ugly appetite with my food, or my son. Or do I have to tell her because you don't have the guts? Huh, boy? You have the guts, boy?
Well, a boy's best friend is his mother.
And welcome back to the SuperCaZt. I'm the man who put the Z in SuperCaZt, Steve Z.
And I'm the man who put the super in the SuperCaZt, the Super Foch. Welcome, guys.
Yeah, and we are here for a very special episode. It is a Mother's Day episode, so happy Mother's Day to everybody. And
Definitely.
This is a story about a boy and his mother. And he's a boy who's very close to his mother, probably a little too close. And that is Psycho. So
Yes.
What do you feel about this film, man?
Boy, this film it's classic. It is a classic film. Started out as a novel, and then Hitchcock pretty much took it over and really made a masterpiece. I think this is probably, if not my favorite, it's probably top 3. I also like Vertigo, and of course North by Northwest, who we also talked about some months ago. So if you haven't checked that episode out, there's a plug for you right there. But this one is, I don't think, even if you've never seen a Hitchcock movie, you know this movie and The Birds. Like, I think anybody could probably pick this movie out. It's got a long history. It's got a lot of fans, including myself. But you were telling me that you were a fan, but maybe not as big of a fan as maybe you once were. Is that right?
Yeah, this one is one that, like you were saying, you said it perfectly. Even if you're not this is not a huge Hitchcock film. Like, if you're not a big Hitchcock fan, you've seen this film, or you are aware of this film, because it's pretty much the horror people get into it, the classic film people get into it, because this is the film that a lot of people circle and say, yeah, it's a great one. And so I think a lot of people are aware of it. A lot of people have seen it. Let's not even get into that stupid remake.
No, we're not.
But yeah, Hitchcock, for me, this is not, I'm not going to belittle the movie and say it's a piece of crap or anything, but to me, I'm more of his fan of his atmospheric type films, the psychological thrillers. But this one, it definitely gets into that territory. It has scenes that kind of stand out to me a lot that I can't wait to talk about, and definitely very memorable characters. But I'm certainly glad that you mentioned that grand trio of Hitchcock films, because that's what you have to, when you sit down to watch this film, you have to think about that. Because he had Vertigo. That's how he started off, which to me is his masterpiece. To me, that is Hitchcock.
I can argue that. Yeah.
His most personal film, his most hypnotizing film. And then after that, he's like, oh crap, people didn't like that. So I'm like, let's just give them the thrills. Let's give them North by Northwest. And that blew people away, and they're just like, that's awesome. And then he comes out with this one. This is the low-key one. This is the one with the low budget. It's using the crew from the television show that he was working on at the time.
Yep.
And it just kind of stands out for that, but I think it is still dark, and it still goes places that no other Hitchcock film goes, which makes it really cool.
And I think this is a film that's sort of ahead of its time in a lot of ways as well. I think it kind of addressed some issues that you didn't see being addressed, as far as, some mental stuff and, the way they viewed people and people with mental situations going on was a lot different back then. And Hitchcock does I think a really good job of kind of showing with this, because the thing is, when you look at this guy, Norman Bates, by the way, we don't even have to say this, but I'm gonna go ahead and say it anyways. We're gonna spoil the heck out of this film. It's older than us, way older, so if you haven't seen it and you don't want to be spoiled, go ahead, go watch it and come back, because it's worth watching. But anyway, if you meet the guy at first, he doesn't seem very imposing. Like, he's not even creepy, in my opinion. Like, there's no, like, if you were to show someone this movie that's never seen it, they probably wouldn't peg the guy as who he becomes. Do you agree with that or no? You agree with that or no?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's part of the thing about it, and it's something that Hitchcock's explored before in other films. Is like sort of like the dark side of humanity that's hidden under the surface that most of us don't ever see. So yeah, I guess the film does get into that a lot, but I'm not ready to talk about Norman yet. I think this.
Yeah, I'm just saying.
This discussion, it eventually gets to Norman, and I guess that's the big draw to it is Norman and the whole thing with Mother. That's why it's called Psycho. I mean, that's the name. That's what it's all about. That's what creates the terror. But I think, to me, kind of where it starts off is just the way the story's told, the plot. It's a very simple plot, and it kind of starts off in a way that you really don't expect. I mean, it starts off just Marion. She's with her boyfriend. They're hanging out, and they've just had an afternoon delight. And
literally.
Literally. And we just get to know sort of who she is and follow her around. But then she gets tempted, like pretty much instantly, by this $40,000. And she takes it off. We follow her as she's trying to sort of escape the scene with the thing. I'm going to throw this out there. Marion is the worst criminal ever.
Thank you.
Did you have those thoughts every time you watch this?
Look, and again, I love this film, but I hate this character. And this sounds bad, but she's a fictional character, so it's not that bad, but I didn't care that she died. I did not care. I mean, it's sad, but it's like, she's not a damsel in distress type character. She is got a head on her shoulders, and she does make a really bad decision of stealing $40,000 and then going to this creepy hotel. So, she made her bed and she lied in it, literally. And it's one of the negatives. We were talking off the air about the negatives of this film, and I think right off the bat, this is it, is Marion. And I'm not talking about the performance. I'm not talking about the actress. I'm talking about the character. Like, she just rubbed me the wrong way from the beginning. I just did not. I had more empathy for her sister, who was obviously, having the worst day of her life, but not Marion. I don't know what it is, and I can't explain it other than I don't know. I didn't have any sympathy for her at that point. What about you?
Man, I just can't believe you're starting off with this. This is like...
Hey,
This is like intense hot take.
I've told you, man.
I definitely have sympathy for her. I don't think anybody deserves this fate.
No.
Yes, she made a bad mistake, but the rest of it's just happenstance. It just happened.
Yeah.
But I do think she's a very interesting character, as in, I don't get her. I don't understand why she takes the money in the first place. That was my first question for you. Why does she take it? I don't know. I don't really know, other than the plot has to go that she has to be on the run to end up at the hotel eventually. But I don't really see anything that motivates her to. And then it seems like after she gets it, she's like, what do I do with this now? Where am I supposed to go? The only thing I can really come up with is that she just gets caught up in the madness of the moment. That guy sitting there waving that in front of her. Yeah. Maybe she resents him. Maybe she doesn't want him to have it. So she just takes it.
I have one theory, and this may be it or it may not be. But you remember at the beginning of the film when she's talking to her boyfriend, and he's talks about these debts that he's in, like he's got to pay this alimony or whatever. So my only thought was maybe she was stealing the money for him and going to give it to him and say, hey, let's, So, but even still, her doing that showed that, she was going to take a big chance. And I mean, if she got caught like that, I mean, she's going to jail. She's not going to see her boyfriend, no way. So, she took a really big risk, at the start. And then she took a risk with the cop. I thought, that scene was kind of interesting. And of course, selling the car and trying to hide. She's playing hide and seek pretty much with everybody, and that's why the more I saw of this, the less I cared about her, and that's why I said what I said. Yeah, sure, nobody deserved her fate. I'm not saying she deserved to be murdered. Let me back up there. But as far as her just having a bad day and having bad luck, no, she did things to get her in that position. So it's a little bit more difficult for me to be like, oh man, that sucks for her. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, and I'm glad you pointed that one thing out. I don't know why that slipped my mind about the boyfriend, but even then, I don't really buy them like as a serious couple. I think it's just like we just meet up, we do this. I mean, they don't even leave the hotel together. She's like, I mean, he wants to. He's like, yeah, hey, can we leave together? Let's pretend we're actually a couple or something. And she's like, no, I got to get back to work. I don't see them that close. So I don't know why she takes the money personally. But she has that sort of just terrible execution of this plan. I don't know how she doesn't get caught. She and Norman both. They're both just terrible criminals. They get so nervous at the slightest of questions, guys. I mean, it's just simple. Just kind of act natural. Just like, I'm just selling my car. I'm just passing through. This thing seems like it's kind of on its last leg. I kind of want to try something new, Yeah. I mean, she just pulls up just like, she's never even thought of what she's going to say. She's just like, I need this car right now.
Yeah, right.
I don't know. I think I'd give her a hard time, but I really like the performance, and I like.
Of course.
I like Janet Leigh. She's great. This and The Fog are my two favorite films of her.
Yeah, of course, the mother of Jamie Lee Curtis.
Of course.
So
and she's great, and her character, the way it's written.
Yeah.
I mean, I know what they're going for, and we forgot to even mention that, like Hitchcock, what he's trying to do here is just kind of like a simple sort of like exploitation film. That's why like the budget's kind of scaled back, but it's a very effective one, and I kind of like how we are just following her around at the beginning of the film, and she's the only perspective we have. What do you think about that?
Yeah, no, I think this film does a good job of subversing what's going to happen, because it's like it starts out with this woman, and so you think she's the main character. You think this story is about her, when you find out it's later about Norman, and he's the bigger fish in this story. And so, yeah, I do love her performance. I do love that, I do think that the boyfriend is probably more in love with her than she him. I got that vibe as well. That's something else that I kind of hit on, because she's like, yeah, we're just going to be meeting in privacy. I mean, in public, and all this kind of stuff, and just basically kind of just stringing them along, kind of thing. And so it was kind of funny that the boyfriend would even want to help find her at that point, because he just didn't seem like he cared after that, because she kind of blew him off a little bit. But I think Janet Leigh does a really good job of, she presents herself in an interesting way, and the character is, of course, like we said, not the smartest, but I think she did a really good job of portraying this character as kind of nasty and as kind of questionable as she is.
Yeah, and to me, she has that standout scene where she's like driving in the car and she's smiling about it. I don't know. To me, that's my favorite scene of her. It shows you just sort of the mess she's in, but luckily she seems like she's starting to kind of snap out of all of this as she's talking with Norman, and we have to stop and talk about that scene. She and
Okay.
Norman meet up at the Bates Hotel. They're having ham sandwiches, talking about things in this parlor with all these stuffed birds everywhere.
Creepy.
Yeah, what do you think about this scene? As we're introduced to Anthony Perkins playing Norman Bates, and these two have their little talk that's kind of like, to me, it's like the middle part of the film where it kind of just totally changes on its head.
I'm going to probably say something that most people, including yourself, might disagree, but I actually have more empathy for Norman than I do, what's her name? I don't think this, I mean, yes, this man does some horrible things, and he does commit murder, and that's terrible, but I think this man is severely mentally handicapped, like severely. I think his mother had something to do with that. And, I'm not saying they deserve to be murdered and, murder's justifiable. No, it's not. But I just think this guy, I think there was a good side of him. Even at this point, I think there's a side of him that wants to be good and wants to be nice to this woman. I don't think murder was the first thing he thought of when he saw her. That's just, that's my opinion. I think there's just some, inner demons in him that kind of take over. And, you can debate on that, and I'd love to hear your take on it in a minute. But this introductory, he's trying to be polite. He's trying to help her out. Is it an act? Maybe. It could be a complete act, and I could be completely wrong. But I do feel like there is a good side to him. But I'll leave that up to you and how you feel.
Well, there's a good side to him, but there's also multiple sides to him. He's
right.
He's a man with multiple personalities. One
exactly.
of them happens to be a psychotic mother.
Mm-hmm.
But he's a complicated character. He's a tortured character,
mm-hmm.
but at the same time, at this point, I think this is the part of Norman that is unaware of that scary psychotic part.
Mm-hmm.
And we get to know him. He seems like the boy next door. He seems like he's lonely. He seems like he's isolated, and he seems like he's kind of off his rocker a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And Marion, she feels that too. We're feeling what she's feeling. We're still kind of following her footsteps.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of why in this conversation they're having, she starts questioning what she's done, with sort of the mad thing she did, and think, you know what, probably should just turn around and go home.
Yeah, exactly.
Probably should pay this back. But unfortunately, she stopped in the wrong place. And this guy, as she's talking to him, we get the first time as an audience just that he's kind of dark, and he's this mother character he keeps mentioning. She might be kind of weird, and I think that's the bigger thing. Because this movie has so many red herrings in it, or just little feelers there. It's like, follow this path, this clue.
Yeah.
And that's why I wish I could watch this movie again for the first time and not know anything about the twist. Because now I appreciate it, because I see these little parts of it, and I see it in his performance, definitely. Like, whenever they go into, he's showing her the room, and he says, he can't even say bathroom because of what's happened in the bathroom in the past. So I am with you in a way that he is unaware that he does not intend malice towards her at this point.
Yeah, right.
That is a part of his personality that's kind of locked off. But kind of what puts him there is he's tempted by her. This is the big scene that changes it for me, is when he takes down that picture. This is where we change our perspective. We no longer her point of view. We switch to him. And he's looking through there. He's leering at her.
Yeah.
I don't know what he's thinking, but you can kind of guess. And this is the part that kind of makes Mother kind of angry.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of the part of the film that really stands out to me, is how the film just kind of switches right there.
The way I see it is, Marion, she might do bad things, but she still has her conscience, and I think she has every intention of turning around and giving this money back. Whereas our boy Norman, he wants to stop and do good, but he can't. He has no control anymore over himself. He's just gonna, whatever happens, and he just has no control of it. But I do think there's a part of him that doesn't want to go down that path, but he's already conditioned himself because of, his past and what he did before, that, there's no going back. There's no putting the genie back in the bottle, so to speak, kind of thing. So, she's doomed as soon as she gets there. I mean, her fate is completely sealed. And there are things, I think you're right. There are things that you're like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That, but I think that's what makes this film rewatchable too, is that you find different stuff. I had forgotten about the whole $40,000 thing this time around, so I was like, oh yeah, I completely forgot about that. So I think it's an interesting thing that, yeah, she's made some questionable choices and going down a questionable road, no pun intended, but she still has this thing in her mind that goes, okay, yeah, maybe this is not the best thing. I'm going to go make this right. But unfortunately, she doesn't get that chance.
Yeah, and speaking of rewatchable, like you bring that up, just rewatching this thing, I pick up on little things like that Hitchcock puts in there. And
right,
as you were speaking, I just started thinking about one scene that kind of refutes everything I was saying there to defend Norman. There is part of that does want to kill her, because whenever he realizes that she used an alias, he checks the notepad and he's like, at least that's another genius thing about Hitchcock is we don't have any exposition here. We don't have any like dialogue. It's
true.
Huge parts of this film is just silence or just the music playing and we're watching the action. And so we don't know what he's thinking. Maybe he was plotting to kill her at that point. Maybe that was just, hey, I am going to just spy on her because she's a nobody. Who knows? But it's definitely intriguing. And going back to what you were saying about rewatchable and how you notice different things. After the shower scene, you notice zooms in on the money. And it's kind of like you were saying, remember this? But after that, the money doesn't mean anything for the rest of the film. So that's probably why you forgot about it.
Sure,
but
good point.
Before we move on, I got to ask you about something.
Okay, sure.
Just because I'm watching it. And I don't know how I feel when I'm watching this scene. But I was interested if you know how you feel when you watch this. The shower scene.
Okay.
How does it make you feel?
That's a very interesting question. Okay, so as far as the murder part, that's uncomfortable and, that'd be terrible. I mean, she has no way to defend herself. She's as vulnerable as anyone could ever be in that situation. It's why he probably chose that point in time. But what unnerved me more than anything, maybe even more than the act itself, is the time that Hitchcock takes to show the cleanup. Like, that's a good long, 3 or 4 minutes. And I can't remember if there's any music going on at that point in time or not. I can't remember. But I was just amazed of how long he took to show him. And he's this is kind of interesting too, is he takes his time. He folds the apron thing, very carefully and really cleans up very carefully. And after this horrendous murder thing too. So it's like it's really probably one of the most unnerving parts of the film, because it's just so uncomfortable to watch the murder and then watch the entire cleanup, because you don't see that in other movies. You might see the act and then they go to another scene, or after the act. So you don't see both usually in the same kind of thing. And I thought that was a very interesting choice to kind of include that, to make it all more, real or believable, because this could really happen. I mean, this is not a far-fetched plot by any stretch of the imagination. But I thought that was just, and that's another thing I had forgotten, is the time that Hitchcock gave for Norman to do all the cleanup and for us to watch the entire thing. What was your reaction to that part?
Yeah. So the shower scene, I think you kind of nailed it there. Is she is vulnerable. That's what it's all
Mm-hmm.
about. It, and you feel like when you're watching it, it feels like that.
Yeah.
This is significant. This is not right. This is that's it's just terrible. It's very unnerving, especially as it zooms into like the water going down the drain, and then it goes to her eye, and she's just sitting there lifeless, and you're just like, well, that's the end of her. And
It's graphic. It's graphic.
And as a viewer, it's very unnerving because this is who you've been following the whole film.
Yeah.
And now it switches to Norman, and I guess that's why he does have the cleanup, is because we're supposed to sympathize with him. Is if you don't know what the ultimate twist is, you're like, oh, he's got to hide this. His mother killed this person.
Yes.
He doesn't want her to go to prison.
Good point. Yep.
He has to hide it. And this is the part I noticed. Going back to the rewatching yet again. Last night when I was rewatching it, he's pretty good at this. This is how you know that he's done this a few times. Because he's not freaking out about the death and stuff. He just immediately has a plan. He knows how to clean it up. He knows what to do. And we watched him do this. So that's the way I interpret that scene. I interpret it as this guy, he's kind of shocked. But not as shocked as a real person would be if they saw a dead body.
Right.
Most of us, we're cleaning it up. We're not going to be cleaning up that well, that meticulous. We're going to be frantic. He's not frantic. He's calm. He knows what he's doing.
It's like you said, there's many sides to this guy. And I think there's a side that you're talking about that has all of this down pat. I mean, he knows where to go, what to do, how to do it, all that kind of stuff. But when the investigator comes by and he talks to other people, he gets real nervous and he, stutters. Even with Marion talking to her, he stuttered a little bit. So it's like the act itself is okay, and he can, compartmentalize or schizophrenia or whatever you want to say. But when he has to talk about it, that's when he starts to be nervous and kind of, almost like he's thinking about it. Almost like that's when he starts to think about, oh my gosh, I did do this horrible thing. This thing really happened. It wasn't just a dream or some kind of, whatever. This was him. And I find that very interesting because, as you said, when he's doing everything, and even in the cleanup, there's not an ounce of worry. There's not an ounce of, it's almost like he's, changing the sheets like he does, or it's just another job that he has to do, and he does it and doesn't even have to think about it until someone from the outside comes in and says, well, what about this? What about that? So, again, just a really interesting part right there.
Yeah. And he's going to clean it up. But like you were saying, when Abergast comes and interviews him, he's pretty terrible. He's just almost as bad as Marion when it comes to being a criminal. But that's something for another time.
Right.
But once again, go back to how brilliant this is how it changes yet again at this. We go from this scene with Norman cleaning up to all of a sudden we have different protagonists. Now we're introduced to Vera Miles, Marion's sister, and also Sam Loomis, the lover. He's back in the picture. And they're the two people that we have to follow around along with the kind of sketchy investigator Abergast. What do you think about him? Because he's kind of the main character there for a bit too.
He obviously, again, spoiler alert, he obviously gets killed, and I hate that. He's just trying to do his job. He's just trying to, see what happened. He just got caught in a bad situation himself, and Norman was not gonna let, or the mother, if you please, if you want, was not gonna let this guy find out anything, or at least be able to live to tell about it. I mean, he was taken out. I had forgotten how abruptly he is taken out too. I mean, that stair shot where he's falling down the stairs, it's almost comical, but it is iconic. That's a very famous shot too. What about you? What's your opinion on our little investigator guy?
I think yet again it's a lot of misdirection by Hitchcock, because it's at first you're like, this guy, he doesn't seem like he's on the up and up,
right?
And then you're like, oh, he's gonna catch Norman. He's gonna get him. And then we kind of like realize, oh, he's actually a pretty good guy. He's actually trying to solve this issue. He's trying to help out Marion. And then he gets killed. And you're just like, okay, there was another main character dead.
He's gone too. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's kind of the thing that kind of stood out to me last time I watched this is how, yet again, it's very, the whole film works together, but it's very episodic in a way. It's reminds me kind of like a Tarantino, like sort of vignettes in there or something. But the end of that one does not end well for Abergast. And yet again, we have a pretty horrifying scene with Mother. Like I think definitely Hitchcock was pushing the limits with this one as far as the violence and what we see and what we don't. And definitely with the look of it, like you were talking about the falling down the stairs shot. It's a lot of shots like that just kind of make you feel like you're watching something that's just kind of off. Yeah, just something that you shouldn't be seeing this. It's not right.
Yeah, I mean, like I said at the beginning, this film I think was a little bit ahead of its time with the subject matter, and then with some of these violent scenes. I mean, and you can probably tell me, explain it better, but you just didn't see movies like this graphic and this taboo, really, because I mean, the guy is obsessed with his mother so much that he has her corpse, in his room, and then he assumes her identity, assumes her personality, and you just didn't see movies like this. And I think this was a big risk on Hitchcock's part to do this. Obviously, I think he pulls it off, and I think it's a I don't think anybody, especially at that time, could have done this movie justice the way he did it.
Yeah, and I think it's sort of like a getting back at the censors, getting back at sort of like the ratings board and stuff, because he always tried to like push stuff all his whole career. Right. And I think this time he's just kind of like, well, forget that mess. I'm just gonna not beat around the bush. I'm gonna put it out there, and it's definitely controversial for the time period and for some of it still, I guess, now. But there's one thing I want to talk to you about that kind of stood out to me is how he uses the settings in the film, because we start out the film in these sort of like mundane type settings, and the way it's shot, it looks like a film set or something. It looks like a TV show. And then as things go by, as we get into like the more to the Bates Motel, we see it looks more realistic. It seems more like homely, but also has sort of a sinister edge. And then all of a sudden we get inside the house, and that's where the setting there's just like parts of that house that just have this like their own sort of world to them, their own sort of feeling, their atmosphere. And that's what kind of stood out to me while I was watching it. It's just how he lights the scene and how he like makes you feel whenever these settings change, and it gets a lot darker.
Yeah, definitely. I think this movie does. I think it's done a lot of good justice when we get to the motel. Obviously, and we haven't touched on this, but the film was filmed in black and white. But they were having color movies at the time. But I thought that was a really good choice on Hitchcock's part, is to put this movie in black and white. It's got a noirish feel. It's got obviously a horror feel. And I think the black and white just really goes a long way in keeping that, vibe going the entire film. And yeah, I mean, you start out at the apartment, and then you go to the office. It's okay. You're just like, okay, yeah. But when you get to the motel and the house, I just think it's creepy. It's immediately creepy before anything happens. Before you find out anything that's going on, you're like, yeah, this is very sketchy. And the fact that she wasn't creeped out by it is kind of interesting in its own right. Like, she's like comfortable there, because like you watch that scene where Norman and her talk for the first time, and he's just so sketchy. And you would think she'd have been like, I don't think I should stay here. I probably need to go. But she stays. And like we said, talked about earlier. But as far as the setting goes, I think once we get to that area, to the motel, and of course, especially the house, that really kind of hammers home what Hitchcock is trying to do here, and you are freaked out, you are scared, and it's very effective. And I think that's one of the things that Hitchcock does best in this movie is to create this really creepy atmosphere, really disturbing, and with the black and white and just for the setting itself, I think really did a good job with that and really puts you as a viewer into that world, and you're a little creeped out yourself. So at least I was watching that last night.
Yeah, it is, and it's sort of like a lot of his films do have kind of like build up. They build up, they build up till you get to the top of the mountain, and that's kind of what this film does. Is it just keeps building and building. The music, it gets just kind of stuck in your head from the get-go, and it just kind of starts pulling you in more and more. And that last part at the house, as the mystery is unfolding, as we go into Mother's room, and we see that indention on the bed, and we start to put the pieces together, and we're like, oh, that's not good.
Yeah.
And then we see Norman's room, and to me that was very, very creepy. I mean, the dude is living in like his little kid's room. Like I guess he goes in there and sleeps at night and feels like a little boy. Maybe he's like a little boy inside still.
Yeah,
and then she goes downstairs into the cellar, and you're like, oh crap! That last little scene right there.
Oh, yeah.
I think, and I'll get your thoughts on this in a sec, because I know you have a thought that you wanted to share just now. But
go for it, man.
They could have just ended it right there. That scene in the root cellar, throwing that out there, I think it works.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that the entire third act really levels up the entire film. I think it really raises it, which the film had not been bad up until then. But I think once you get to, and I find it interesting. There's a scene where the boyfriend, or I guess now ex-boyfriend, and the sister go to the sheriff's deputy's house or something like that. And I find that scene interesting because the sheriff deputy doesn't seem very concerned at the beginning. And then you go to that scene where they meet him at the church, and he's like, oh yeah, we went by there, and we didn't notice anything. We didn't, it's like he wasn't expecting anything, so he didn't find anything, and so you're like, well, what's going on here? Like, is he related to Norman? Is he best, why does he, because he seems like he's just out of the loop. He's not even paying attention to everything we are and everything the other characters are. Like, he's just completely clueless up until that final confrontation, and then he's so I find that kind of interesting, his view on Norman, and the mother and all that, is really almost like he's feels pity for the kid, or he just doesn't see him as the threat that maybe others might. What was your reaction to that character specifically?
I guess I just didn't like him. Like, I didn't like that scene, how it was shot at all. I was like, I hate this scene because it kind of it
slowed the movie down.
It slows it down bad.
Yeah.
I think that's a Hitchcock thing. I think he just wants to mess with you because you're in his palm of his hands, and I think he wants you to dislike this character.
Yes,
and he does. I think his big thing, it kind of shows you yet again how just messed up this guy Norman is. That he can be this charming guy to you if you meet him face to face. That's what makes him kind of scary, is that he's that unaware of this hidden part of himself.
Exactly.
And that's kind of what this film, the psychotic part about it.
Yeah, so I want to touch on one more aspect of this film that I think, I wouldn't say is overlooked because it's not, but I love it, and I think it really adds to the whole feeling of the film, and that's the score. That is this music, the way the strings do, almost like the stabbing noise on its own, is extremely effective in this film. I mean, you talk about an atmosphere. I texted you last night and told you, like, I just love how this score, if the visuals don't bring you in, the score definitely does.
Oh yeah, it's iconic. It's the best horror score probably ever. You hear other scores rip it off, sort of like, I mean, I know they know they're doing it too, but like The Thing, I got you to watch that one. I was watching this film and I'm like, oh yeah, that sounds like The Thing music. But it's great, and it pulls you in. That last scene, going back to it again, whenever Norman comes out of the door, he's dressed as Mother, he's about to do his thing, but I don't know, it's just a great scene. I'm probably showing a clip of it right now as I'm talking about it to kind of show it better, but I think the film should have just ended right there. I still stand by that, because the scene that comes after, and Hitchcock says so himself, it's not that good. And
talking about where the mother's talking in his head?
No, not that. Before we get to that, the doctor, Mr. Dr. Exposition, who tells you everything.
Yeah,
it's a poorly shot scene. It has very bad rhythm to it. The actor, I don't think he's the best actor. It's just very unnatural, and it feels like, somebody that was confused didn't understand what was going on.
Right.
They're like, hey, we need this scene in there to explain everything. Yeah. How could they fix it? Maybe reshoot it with a sort of take out some words, take out some dialogue, shoot it a little bit different. But I'm not going to say the last scene's terrible, but this scene in particular.
No, I agree with you. I remember
the whole film.
I was watching that last night, and I was like, yeah, I guess for a person that's never seen this film and they're still not kind of cluing in what's going on, they probably need it. But for the rest of us, it kind of is just like, yeah, we know. We were there. We heard all this. So, yeah, it is a little bit repetitive or redundant or whatever you want to say. But I have to tell you, dude, I've never been more affected by a scene than that final scene with Mr. Bates. The performance he does with just his face, with just his eyes. I actually shared it on our Twitter because of how much I love that last shot. I mean, it's just, you might as well put some white paint on his face and red on his lips and call him the Joker, because that is a Joker look, if ever there was one. I think it's extremely effective, especially because that's the last thing you see when the film's over. So you go home. I cannot imagine going to the theater, watching this maybe at night, and going home and just having that visual, because it'd be stuck in my head probably the whole night. And I think that's a very effective way to end the film. I just love it. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, it redeems what we were just talking about,
right?
The doctor scene. It brings it up out of that because it's well written. The voice acting is really good, and Anthony Perkins, like you said, he's playing it all with his face.
It's amazing.
And pretty much every horror film kind of rips this off yet again. I mean, I was thinking about The Shining, Jack smiling like that. The Joker, you mentioned that. Yeah, once again, Jack again, but Heath Ledger kind of looking at like that.
Yep.
But it's very effective, and I love the thing that Hitchcock does here at the end. And this is why I can't, even though it's not my favorite, there's parts of it that these little flares that he does that I just love. And it has that face, it has that horrified thing, but then it somehow or another, it superimposes the mother's face on top of there, the dead face. And then it dissolves into the car coming up out of the water. It's the best way to end it. I just love that.
It's extremely creepy, and it just, I don't know. I actually felt a shiver go through my spine when that car gets pulled up, because you're just like, oh my gosh. I mean, it's incredible. It's absolutely incredible. And I don't know. I hope, because I know, Steve, you said watching this film last night you didn't love it as much as you used to. I hope talking about it has kind of increased that for you, because I just had a really good time watching this film. I feel like I noticed stuff, like we said earlier, that I hadn't before. And, I've enjoyed this conversation. It's as good as you'd want to have, because this film deserves to still be praised and celebrated for many, many, many years.
Oh yeah, it's a masterpiece. I mean, yeah, I didn't have as much fun watching it this time, but talking about it, yeah, I recognize its brilliance. I recognize how great a film it is, and it does deserve to be in conversations. And this was a lot of fun. I know we just took our script and threw it out the window, but sometimes you got to do that.
Hey,
Sometimes we all go a little mad.
Good one.
She just goes a little mad sometimes. We all go a little mad sometimes.
Thinking of mad, I've accepted something pretty mad from my friend SuperCaZt here. For our next film, we're going to talk about a James Bond film that it's not one of my favorites. It's one that last time we actually did a ranking, it was toward the bottom line.
Yeah.
But I've been wanting to try it out again, and I'm so glad that you recommended it. It's Diamonds Are Forever.
Yes.
We're going to see if this one's forever or if it's just forever terrible. Let's find out.
Yeah, definitely. Hey guys, are you Hitchcock fans? What's your favorite Hitchcock movie? Hit us up on Twitter at SuperCaZt with a Z and let us know. And as always, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, like this video on YouTube, because we are really, really excited to do these. I mean, if you can't tell, we love movies, we love talking about movies, we love sharing movies with other people, and that's exactly why we do this. Want to hear your opinions, want to see what you guys think of this film. Is it your favorite Hitchcock, or is it something else? Love to hear it. But yeah, we're really excited about next week to do Diamonds Are Forever, and so I hope that you will join us on that one. As Steve said, happy Mother's Day to all the mothers, including your sweet wife, and we will see you guys next time on the SuperCaZt.